There are gamblers, and then there are men whose arrival makes powerful people check their balance sheets twice. In 1990, a quiet Japanese businessman walked into Atlantic City and sat down across from an empire already balancing on borrowed money, glossy marble, and a whole lot of bravado. By the time he stood up from that baccarat table, he had nearly taken down the most famous casino owner in America, Donald Trump, and he never once raised his voice. Some said he had ties to the Yakuza. Some said he was simply too rich to care. Either way, the room felt smaller when he entered. His name was Akio Kashiwagi. If we're honest, most men gamble because of the thrill. Some because they hate going home. A few because they need to prove something. Kashiwagi, well, he treated it like a conversation with fate. He was born in Japan sometime between the neat accounting of post-war recovery and the restless bloom of the country's feverish 1980s bubble economy. Real estate, resorts, golf courses carved into mountainsides. He dressed plainly, dark suits, conservative ties, the look of a businessman who could sit through a 4-hour board meeting without blinking, which made it all the more unsettling when he'd sit down at a casino table and casually wager sums that could finance small governments. Because when Kashiwagi walked into a casino, he wasn't one to nibble around the edges. No, you see, he bought the table. It's not like Vegas had never seen whales. There were oil heirs who thought math was optional, tech prodigies who confused variance with destiny, movie stars chasing applause that no longer came. But Kashiwagi brought something colder: stillness. He favored baccarat, that elegant, ruthless game where fortunes hinge on third card rules most of us have to squint to remember. The beauty of baccarat is that you don't get to decide much. You choose banker or player, and then you sit with whatever the cards reveal. Control is minimal. The stakes are not. Kashiwagi liked it that way. He would sit, expression unchanged, and push forward large stacks that barely felt symbolic anymore. Dealers would later say he didn't react. Win or lose, he might nod, maybe adjust his cuff. That was it. If you've ever lost $50 and stared at the ceiling like the universe personally betrayed you, imagine watching a man lose $5 million and calmly ask for tea. That would make an old-school pit boss sweat right through his vest. In the late 1980s, as Japan's economy swelled to magnificent, unsustainable proportions, Kashiwagi became something of a legend among casino executives. Casinos courted him like ranchers pray for rain. Private jets, penthouse suites, personalized service down to the brand of mineral water, and he rode that wave. But there were also dangerous rumors, whispers of Yakuza affiliations, of associations. Nothing ever pinned down in court, but let's just say no one moved that much money in Tokyo in the late 80s without powerful friends. And that's where the story takes a turn that feels almost too cinematic to be true. Enter Donald Trump, just a real estate mogul back then trying to cement himself as the king of the boardwalk. Trump Plaza was shiny, ambitious, and dangerously leveraged. His property needed something dramatic to revive itself, something headline-grabbing, something that suggested power. Kashiwagi was invited. Now, inviting a man like that is not like offering someone a free buffet coupon. You are effectively asking him to stress test your building. And he did. In 1990, Kashiwagi reportedly agreed to a 10-day gambling marathon at Trump Plaza, wagering up to $12 million per hand. The kind of number that makes accountants reach for aspirin. The table was set in a private room, curtains drawn, security thick as humidity. Outside, recession clouds gathered over America. Inside, every turn of the card could tilt the balance sheet of an empire. It wasn't the best start for Kashiwagi. He began losing. Millions drifted across the felt like fallen leaves. Trump Plaza, already carrying heavy debts, breathed easier. There were whispers that a cold streak from Kashiwagi could buy the casino some breathing room. It's one thing to invite a whale. It's another to discover he can swallow the ocean. But then, in the quiet rhythm of baccarat, the tide turned. Kashiwagi started winning. Not wildly, not dramatically, just steadily enough that the mood in the room shifted from opportunistic to uneasy. By some accounts, he left Atlantic City up around $6 million. $6 million. To most of us, that's generational wealth. To him, it was a fluctuation. Trump would later admit the visit was terrifying. Imagine building a golden palace on borrowed money and watching one quiet man with a teacup threaten to knock a load-bearing wall loose. That's how thin the margin was. One calm man, one fragile empire. The Don survived, barely. Here's what I find fascinating. The amounts he gambled weren't what made him legendary. It was the composure. Casinos thrive on emotion, cheers, groans, the sound of someone believing. Kashiwagi offered none of that. There were rumors, of course. Some said he believed in streaks. Some said he chased patterns. Others insisted he was purely mechanical. Truth is, no one truly knew what went on behind that steady gaze. Maybe that's the point. Back in Japan, the bubble swelled higher. Kashiwagi's fortune rose with it, but bubbles don't hum forever. When Japan's bubble collapsed, Kashiwagi felt it. He continued gambling abroad. Las Vegas, Atlantic City, even high-profile matches against Kerry Packer, a man who treated 9-figure swings as part of a weekend. 2 heavyweights, 1 table. It's said they played in Australia and the United States, sometimes exchanging sums that would fund small cities. Yet even among titans, Kashiwagi remained the calmest in the room. No swagger, no spectacle, just numbers. And then, as these stories sometimes do, it ended in a way no one quite expected. In January 1992, Akio Kashiwagi was found murdered in his home near Mount Fuji. Stabbed multiple times, some reports say over 100 wounds. The scene carried the quiet brutality of something personal. Authorities floated theories: organized crime, financial disputes, business conflicts born in the wreckage of Japan's collapsing bubble. The word Yakuza hovered in the background of conversations. No definitive answer ever surfaced. A man who wagered millions against American empires met an ending colder than any casino floor I've been to. And there's just something about high-stakes gamblers who look too calm. Maybe it's the numbers, maybe it's the nerve, or maybe it's the suspicion that they're chasing something we can't see. When Kashiwagi sat at a baccarat table, he wasn't grinning like a tourist, pounding drinks or celebrating prematurely. He seemed detached, as though the outcome mattered less than the act of sitting there, defying the scale of ordinary life. He treated a $12 million wager the way folks treat ordering lunch: calm, deliberate, almost bored. I've seen folks lose $5 and carry it like a grudge for a week. I've seen others win $1,000 and feel invincible. But imagine wagering millions and keeping your pulse steady. That is a particular kind of wiring. Trump would later recount Kashiwagi's visit in his book, The Art of the Comeback, as both thrilling and terrifying. Hosting that level of action is like inviting a storm into your ballroom and hoping it dances politely. Sometimes it does, sometimes it rearranges the furniture. But for 10 days in 1990, a Japanese magnate rumored to brush shoulders with the Yakuza sat across from the Don and quietly threatened to upend the house. And here's the thing about stories like this. They aren't tied to numbers, but atmosphere instead. Kashiwagi's legend isn't loud. It doesn't shout across history like a Wall Street crash. It murmurs quietly at the table and waits for you to notice. Sometimes I wonder what he felt, really. Did he believe the cards would eventually favor him? Did he view each hand as an experiment? Maybe he enjoyed the confrontation. Man versus chance, wealth versus randomness, composure versus chaos. There's a purity to baccarat. Once the bet is placed, you relinquish control. No folding, no doubling down, just fate unfolding in silk-smooth silence. Perhaps that's what drew him. When you command companies and boardrooms, it must be strange to enter a space where your authority evaporates. At the table, even billionaires must wait. And no, I'm not romanticizing it. The sums he wagered could have built hospitals, schools, entire neighborhoods. When he stepped away, casinos whispered about him like a myth, a man who could tilt their quarterly reports in one evening. In the end, his story feels more like a meditation on scale. How much is enough? How steady can a person remain when fortunes sway? The porch gets quiet when you think about it long enough. And when he left, win or lose, the felt carried a memory of him. I imagine that private room in Atlantic City long since rearranged. Different carpets, different dealers, new faces chasing their own storms. But somewhere in the walls, if you listen close, there's the echo of chips stacking high enough to make a casino sweat, and a man sitting perfectly still, waiting. That's the thing about legends of the felt. They won't always roar. Sometimes they sit in silence, push 12 million, and let the Don sweat through his suit. And in the hush between cards, you can almost hear an empire whisper, "Please, not this hand."